Today finds us in Dallas, Texas, as we research the gravesites of Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie and Clyde were not the fun-loving Robin Hood type that is often portrayed in movies and folklore. They were truly cold-blooded killers. Bonnie and Clyde met in Texas in January of 1930. At the time, Bonnie was just 19 years old and Clyde was 20. Soon after, he was arrested for burglary and went to jail. He escaped using a gun that Bonnie had smuggled to him. He was recaptured and was sent back to prison. During his time in prison, he was repeatedly assaulted by another inmate, which led to Clyde killing the man with a lead pipe. Another inmate, who was in prison for life, took the blame for the murder. Many have concluded that the abuse he sustained while in prison was a driving force behind Clyde's violent nature and his hatred of all law enforcement officers. Clyde was paroled in February of 1932 by the infamous Texas Governor Ma Ferguson, who was attempting to address prison overcrowding. Clyde rejoined Bonnie and resumed a life of crime. In April, Bonnie Parker was captured in a failed robbery attempt in Kaufman, Texas. On April 30th, Clyde was involved in a robbery in Hillsborough, Texas, during which shopkeeper J.N. Butcher was shot and killed. His wife ID'd Clyde as one of the shooters. That was his first murder accusation. Bonnie remained in jail until June 17th, when the grand jury declined to indict her and she was released. Within a few weeks, she joined up with Clyde, and they were again on the run. On August 5th, while Bonnie was visiting her mother, Clyde, along with two other of his cohorts, were drinking alcohol at a country dance in Stringtown, Oklahoma. Of course, that was illegal because it was prohibition. When the sheriff and his deputy, Eugene Moore, approached them in the parking lot, Clyde opened fire, killing the deputy. That was the first killing of a lawman by what would later be known as the Barrow Gang. They would end up killing a total of 9 law enforcement officers. On October 11th, a shopkeeper named Howard Hall was killed during a robbery of his store in Sherman, Texas. They got away with $60. Jumping ahead to June of 1933, Clyde, W.D. Jones, and Bonnie were driving and Clyde flipped the vehicle. Bonnie was doused with battery acid and it led to third-degree burns along her entire leg. They met up with Clyde's brother Buck and his wife Blanche, and they hid out in a motel near Fort Smith, Arkansas, to allow Bonnie to recover. During this time, Buck and W.D. Jones bungled a local robbery and they killed a city marshal. On July 18th, the gang checked in to the Red Crown Tourist Court near Kansas City. Blanche attracted the attention of the manager by paying for dinners and beer with silver coins instead of paper money, and her unusual outfit of riding breeches. He also noticed that they had taped newspapers all over the windows of their cabin. Police were contacted and a gunfight resulted. A bullet, probably from Clyde's powerful .30 caliber Browning machine gun, short-circuited the horn on an armored car, and the police officers mistook that for a ceasefire signal, and they didn't pursue Bonnie and Clyde's vehicle as it sped away. Although they got away, Buck had sustained a serious injury. A bullet blasted a large hole in his forehead skull bone and exposed his injured brain, and Blanche was nearly blinded by glass fragments in both of her eyes. They fled to Dexfield Park, an abandoned amusement park near Dexter, Iowa. Local residents noticed their bloody bandages, and officers determined that the campers were the Barrow Gang. Police officers and approximately 100 spectators surrounded the group, and the Barrows soon came under fire. Bonnie and Clyde, along with W.D., escaped by running through the thick brush where their pursuers were reluctant to follow. Buck was shot in the back and died 5 days later in the hospital. Blanche was captured and sentenced to 10 years in prison. In this picture, you can see her riding breeches. Later, she explained she was screaming in this picture because due to her blurred vision from her previous injury, she thought the camera was a gun aiming at her. Bonnie and Clyde continued their spree of robberies, killings, and gunfights for the next 10 months. They were ambushed and killed in 1934 on a rural road in Louisiana. At approximately 9:15 a.m. on May 23rd, a posse concealed in the bushes, heard Clyde's car approaching. He stopped to speak with the father of one of their gang who had been planted there with his truck that morning to distract Clyde. The couple were shot by a posse of 4 Texas officers, Frank Hamer, Manny Galt, Bob Alcorn, and Ted Hinton, and 2 Louisiana officers, Henderson Jordan and Prentice Morrill Oakley. Both Bonnie and Clyde sustained approximately 50 gunshot wounds each. When he arrived at the scene, the coroner recalled this. Nearly everyone had begun collecting souvenirs such as shell casings, slivers of glass from the car windows, and bloody pieces of clothing from the garments of Bonnie and Clyde. One eager man had opened his pocket knife, and he was reaching into the car to cut off Clyde's left ear. I also heard that one person tried to cut off Clyde's trigger finger. And this is where they ended up. Today finds me in Dallas, Texas, and we are going to see if we can locate the gravesites of Bonnie and Clyde, that famous gangster duo from the 1930s. And here you can see one gravesite that's decked out with balloons and flowers and all kinds of things. As we come up, we see this is none other than Bonnie Parker. Born October 1st, 1910, died May 23rd, 1934. The inscription reads, "As the flowers are all made sweeter by the sunshine and the dew, so this old world is made brighter by the lives of folks like you." Something tells me that Bonnie Parker really didn't make the world very bright. Emma Parker, 1886 to 1944. Loving mother. When Bonnie Parker was just 15 years old, 1 month shy of her 16th birthday, she married Roy Thornton. The marriage didn't last very long. They were soon separated, although she was never divorced. And in fact, when she was gunned down in an ambush, she was still wearing his wedding ring. Thornton later said that he was glad they went out that way because it was better than being caught. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Bonnie Parker didn't make the best choices in men. Thornton also went to prison, and he died as he was gunned down during a jail prison escape. During their time together, Bonnie and Clyde were said to have killed as many as 11 people. Not all of them were police officers. Many of them were civilians. They had sort of a Robin Hood reputation about them. During the Depression, they were looked on as almost folk heroes because they were thought to be bank robbers. Well, a lot of that was just fabrication. They really did rob a lot of stores and gas stations and just regular shops run by regular people. Not that bankers aren't regular people. But that soon came to an end as the killings became more and more public, and people began to realize that Bonnie and Clyde were not good people. So we say goodbye to the grave of Bonnie Parker. We're going to see if we can find the grave of Clyde Barrow. This one I found relatively quickly. It took a while to find Bonnie's gravesite, but I have arrived at the Barrow family plot. So all of these markers indicate a Barrow, Alvin Barrow, Henry and Kumi Barrow, who I'm imagining are Clyde's parents. And here, Clyde Barrow and Marvin Barrow. Clyde of Bonnie and Clyde, and Marvin is Buck Barrow, Clyde's brother, who was also killed in a gunfight and was also part of the Barrow gang. And the inscription's kind of hard to read. Clyde C., March 24th, 1909, died May 23rd, 1934. Marvin, March 14th, 1905, July 29, 1933. So he died roughly a year before his younger brother. Gone, but not forgotten. Truer words have never been written. He is gone, and he's not forgotten. 85 years later, people are still decorating his tombstone, and people are still remembering the legend of Bonnie and Clyde.